Right, so now let's move on to imagery, and this is where the story really starts in a sense, because imagery, as I say, is so important. Here is our famous list of words, which we looked at earlier on. Aeroplane, pumpkin, kitten, dunce's, cat, harmonium, this kind of thing. Now this time what we're going to do is we're going to create a mind movie. We're going to create in our minds an image of each of these nouns, and then we're going to link it in some way to the next image along. So we're going to create this little movie in the mind. And I'm going to give you the movie, so it's not going to be as powerful for you as it would be if you'd created your own links, but just for purposes of demonstration. So, okay, so let's imagine we've got this aircraft, and it's actually made out of a giant pumpkin. So if you can imagine this huge Halloween pumpkin, it's got wings and a tailplane and jet engines, and this great yellow pumpkin flying through the sky, and a rather bizarre thing. And even more bizarrely, it's being piloted by this kitten. And imagine this little kitten sitting up on the flight deck, a little fluffy black and white kitten, and it's got his little paws on the control columns. And it's not actually very good at flying, so it's been given a dunce's cap. Kind of a bit worrying for the passengers. So he's got a pointy dunce's cap. John Duns Scotus, don't forget, the Scots theologian. He's wearing this dunce's cap, and he's got a big red D on the front of the dunce's cap. And while trying to pilot the aircraft, it's actually playing a harmonium. So one of his little paws is on the controls, and the other is playing this harmonium. And the harmonium is made of jelly. And a rather bizarre kind of mold has been used to create this harmonium. And because perhaps the kitten is not actually paying very much attention to what he's doing, he's trying to hum out a tune on his jelly harmonium, he crashes in a forest. So imagine all these green pine trees. And in the forest there's this lovely castle, and the castle gates open, and the chariot appears, and on the chariot is a rocking chair. And the emperor is sitting on the rocking chair, and he's carrying a shotgun in his lap. And so, but however, he's very friendly, and he invites all the crew and the passengers to a banquet. So imagine this table laid out with a damask cloth and lovely silverware, but the only thing they're actually serving is bread. So imagine these big lumps of bread. And when they come to look at this bread more closely, they actually find it's been carved out of stone. It's bread carved out of stone. And from the stone is pouring a torrent of cream. This cream is pouring out, and there's so much cream is pouring out that there's actually a ship. So imagine a ship any way you like, maybe a little paddle steamer, or maybe a schooner, or something like that, or Queen Elizabeth, or whatever. It's floating on this cream, and it's crewed entirely by snowmen. Okay, all these little snowmen running around the decks. Well, some of them running around the decks, others are sitting in the poop deck watching television. And out of the back of the television, instead of an aerial, we've got this oak tree. It's going up, try and imagine this oak tree. And instead of conkers hanging from the oak tree, there are catapults. And the catapults are firing up at a pumpkin, which is shaped like an aircraft. Okay, so let's now see how good we are at remembering that using that image. Now, it's only 10 nouns, 20 nouns rather. It's not very difficult. So let's see how we can, if you could move the camera onto the audience, because we want to see how amazingly good their memory has suddenly become. Okay, so where do we start off with on that list, ladies and gentlemen? Okay, and what is the, sorry. Pumpkin, aeroplane, yes. Kitten, yes. And what's the kitten doing? Yep. Playing? Yes, made out of? Okay, where do they crash? Yeah, and where's in the forest? There's a absolutely, and out of the castle?
Rocking chair. With a shotgun on it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Very well, you remembered it. You remembered it. You remembered it actually. So well, I think you deserve a round of applause. You remember that in less time than actually I gave you to read it the first time round. But you see,
was not aeroplane.
yes, it was. Very well done. Now, why do you think that occurred? I could say it was an amazing test of your memory. In fact, it was just an amazing error in creating the slide. But thank you very much. You see, well, it was actually an amazing test to see if you actually spotted the... no, it was a mistake, which actually threw me as well. I didn't think it started with a pumpkin. Okay, the thing about this is you now created this mind movie. Do you notice at the end I said the catapult is firing up at the aeroplane? So you could now just as easily do that list in reverse, because you know there's a catapult which is attached to the oak tree, which is coming out of the back of a television, which is being watched by snowmen, which is on a ship, which is floating on cream, which is coming out of stone. Bread, yeah, okay, banquet. So you've got the list. You could start anywhere in that list. You could start at banquet and work backwards or forwards. All you've got to do is to move the movie around. You can run the movie backwards, you can start in the middle of the movie and go to the end, or go to the beginning. So that is two very important techniques. Use imagery. That's what every memory man you'll ever see in the world does, or woman does. They use imagery. Use imagery yourself. Create images. Really, your imagination is the only limitation on your memory. The more imaginative you can be, the easier it becomes. Now, Dominic mentioned another technique which he uses, which is the method of loci, which is the method which Simonides developed by going round this banqueting hall in his mind's eye and seeing where all the victims had lying. So we're going to use the method of loci now. And the way you do this, you take a familiar journey. Now, Dominic suggested you took a journey in your house because that's the place where we're most familiar. But you've probably got favourite walks. Favourite parts of the town. You go on a shopping trip around the town. The Romans, the Greeks used to call this the method of buildings because they would have famous buildings they would go around. It doesn't really matter where you go, but it's got to be a familiar landscape for you, a familiar territory. So this is what you do. You take a familiar territory, you walk around your home or your neighbourhood in your mind's eye, and you place one item at each of the locations. If you're going for a walk, I take a walk over the downs when I want to remember, and I've got a location on my journey, 20 or 30 locations, I can just drop something there. So in my mind's eye, I just go back for the walk, and at each location I stop and see what I've left there. That's essentially the method of loci. So in order to recall the name, the list, you simply retrace your footsteps. And as Dominic showed, with the number system he used, you can start, stop anywhere you want. You can go backwards or forward. You can start at a number and go forward. He showed you that with the cards as well. So here we are. Here's our little memory test, which we had before. Eggs, flour, cheese, bacon, apples, salt, cereals, chocolates, mustard, sliced bread, bananas, pickles, milk, fish, washing up liquid, and orange juice. Right, now then. Perhaps you might find it easier if you were to close your eyes for this, if that's okay. And what I'm going to do is I invite you to take your own personal journey around wherever you want to go, and when you reach the first location, what I'd like you to do is to put down a carton of eggs. Imagine 6 eggs in a carton. Now, move along to your next location. If you're entering your home, for example, you might put the eggs on the hall table. Now, you've got some flour, a container, a sack of flour, a bag of flour. Try and imagine that, try and visualize that, get an image of that. Now, you're moving on to another part of the location. You're putting down a nice cheese, maybe a nice red Edam cheese or something like that, red rind, and now some bacon going down. Move on to the next location. Apples. Try and see these things as vivid as you can, and next to the apples or next location we're putting some salt. Then some cereals are going down, a box of cereals. And next location, some chocolates. Nice box of chocolates. Next to them, some mustard. Okay, and some sliced bread. Bananas, next. Pickles. Jar of pickles. Bottle of milk. Carton of milk. Fish. Some washing up liquid. And the final item on your list is some orange juice. You've made your journey round your location. Okay, now let's just see how good you are at that. Now remember, you're going back into, retrace your steps, go back into your location and go to the first location. What did you put on the first location? Yes. Right, absolutely right. And the second location? Flour. Absolutely, very good indeed. Next location? Cheese. Yes, correct. Bacon. Yes. 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 Yep. Yes. Next one. Yes. Yes. Yes, and orange juice. And you see, you've got the list entirely perfectly in mind, and I'm afraid that will actually now stay with you till the rest of your life. And of course, because all you've got to do if you wanted to know the list backwards, you simply got to retrace your journey backwards. So you would start off with the orange juice and the washing up liquid and the fish and so forth. So that's essentially the method of loci. Now clearly I'm using very trivial examples because I want just to make the point about how it's done. Develop imagery for the things you want to learn. Now there are a whole range of ways of doing this, and you will find ways which appeal most comfortably to your brain. Dominic likes to use people he knows when he's trying to remember people's names and faces, or famous people. There are a whole range. There's no right way of doing it. It's right if it works for you. But what you must remember is imagery, mental preparation, attention, it's very, very important, and training, rehearsing that memory. Both training your brain by practicing, by just doing things, just memorizing things. I mean, I try and remember, because I'm very interested in poetry, I try and remember a poem every night. And some are much easier to remember than others. Louis MacNeice, anybody know the Scots poet Louis MacNeice? He's quite hard. Bagpipe music is not an easy poem to learn. Other poems are much simpler, some of the rhyming structures. Of course, they're rhymes, so rhymes are quite easy because they suggest themselves. But I think, you know, if you could just practice with your memory and have confidence in your memory, and please never ever say to yourself or anybody else, I've got a terrible memory. It's just so untrue. If memories could hire lawyers, you'll be sued, because it's just not true.